Hey guys, today I want to do a book review for you of the incredible book by Wendell Berry called The Unsettling of America, Culture and Agriculture. Um, and he updated it recently, I don't know, the past 20 years, 10, 15 years, with a new afterword. Um, this book was written in 1977 is the copyright date on it, and it's basically about culture and agriculture, and it's really philosophical in its nature. And I don't, this book is a lot to read. There's so many, what I found, profound ideas in it. And I read this kind of when I was getting into agriculture. So if you don't know my background, I don't have a background in agriculture. My family did not, I did not grow up on a farm. My family probably hasn't farmed in, a couple generations. So um, this was really, really interesting read. Let's go to the contents here. And I highly, if you're interested in agriculture or even homesteading, or you're just interested in philosophy in general, I would highly recommend you read this book immediately. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or something for ridiculously cheap. You could find it at your library. Um, let's go into the contents here. The first chapter one is the unsettling of America. That he basically is talking about how people are moving from rural areas into cities, and he goes in to explain why that is. The Industrial Revolution, factory jobs. He talks about private property rights. So the next section, chapter two, the ecological crisis as a crisis of character. Just think about that for a second. He's talking about how the crisis within America and the world of what we're doing to our planet, and I'm not necessarily talking about global warming, but polluting the planet to the point that we are as humans is going to come back to bite us at some point in time, whether or not we're around or not. But it's going to happen, and without the Earth, we don't have life, so it makes no sense to keep on destroying it. And it's not a hippie mumbo jumbo type argument from him. It's a rational, sane argument. Okay. And then he equates that the reasoning for that is because of our character. What's happening to us as humans? We're losing our character, and I think every generation probably feels that way. Like the generation that comes after them or the one after that. Like what my parents think of my generation is probably not all good things necessarily. And I'm already starting to think in somewhat negative terms about, kids that are already out there right now, because I've had the privilege, if you want to say that, of interacting with them in public schools as a teacher. So that's a super interesting chapter. The ecological crisis as a crisis of agriculture. And then the next chapter is the one as a crisis of culture. So he talks about how agriculture is part of the problem, how our culture is part of the problem, and how our character is a part of the problem. And I won't elaborate much more than that. There's just so many fascinating ideas in this book. It's kind of hard to put down, and at the same time, hard to rationalize everything and take what he's saying into consideration, because there's just so many ideas in there. Um, this is one of the books that's challenged me the most on my ideas, and that's a good thing. That's what I look for in a book. Um, Living in the future, the modern agricultural ideal. This is an awesome chapter. Um, I really don't care for industrial agriculture, but he talks about how all these universities and all these big companies and crap are trying to come up with all these, um, you know, utopian ideals of agriculture. And they're all mechanized, they're all industrialized, and they're all, automated basically. So there's not much human involvement. Um, and without human involvement, you could argue that that isn't agriculture. That's, what would that be? Mining, or, producing raw commodities. So that chapter is really interesting, and it also leads you to kind of the danger of what this type of thinking leads to, and what these universities, these big ag universities, are actually giving us. Not that everything they're giving us is negative, but the mentality that he describes in this chapter is basically what is happening in those big institutions. Um, So let's see. I'm trying to get this clear for you guys. We talked about modern agriculture, the use of energy. That's interesting. He talks about fossil fuels and using farm animals to do the work. I think he even talks about how he gives an example of a small farm or a village, and that the people were pretty close to each other, and that before there were these huge giant cities, we didn't require this massive uses of energy. Well, going back to a village type um, scenario would take a lot of time and effort by a lot of people, and in some ways we'd be going against the grain of what our society has become. But he does raise an interesting point, and it's not to say that you can't take some of these ideas and apply them to your life or your farm. So, again, I mean, just really incredible. Use of the body and the earth. He talks about the earth and the human body, health, things like that. Thomas Jefferson, moral, and the upper crust. He talks about these guys as farmers, um, and the upper echelons of society. It's all, this whole entire book is just fascinating. I mean, really. Um, I'm gonna have to read it again. That's how fascinating it really is. And then he ends with a new afterword for the third edition. So I bought this book used on Amazon. So I guess I have the third edition. I'm not sure if that's the newest edition, but that's the edition I have nonetheless. Um, you know, New York Times review, Los Angeles Times review. I wanted to read the. I know you could read the little excerpt on the back of a book anywhere, but I wanted to read it for you guys anyway to kind of get you a sense of what this book is actually like. In The Unsettling of America, Wendell Berry argues that good farming is a cultural development and a spiritual discipline. Today's agribusiness, however, takes farming out of its cultural context and away from families, and as a nation we are thus more estranged from the land, from the intimate knowledge, love, and care of it. Sadly, as Berry notes in the afterword to this new edition, his arguments and observations are still relevant today. We continue to suffer the loss of community, the devaluation of human work, and the destruction of nature under an economies dedicated to the mechanistic pursuit of products and profits. So, like I said, this book was written in 1977. I don't know if I looked at the copyright date before I read it, but it could have been written yesterday. That's how timeless and relevant this is, and it makes you wonder what's going to happen 30 years from now, because this was written 30 years ago, and not much has changed, right? So it's up to us as individuals to educate ourselves, and as farmers you know, to be well read. And back in the day, farmers were actually one of the smartest people in a society, because they were well read. They had a lot of practical experience, and they knew how to produce something from the land in addition to running a business. So I think we need to kind of revitalize that mentality of what our farmers do for society, as opposed to being the lowest members of our society that just produce the food for all the other rich people. So I hope you guys enjoyed this book review, and look forward to more over the next coming weeks. Take care.